Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the original historical documents to uncover the secret history of Christianity's first encounter with Japan. And let me tell you, it's a story of faith, guns, and empires that's way darker than you probably think. You see, this story is so much more complicated than just a clash of beliefs. It's got everything: opportunistic warlords, competing global empires, and a really shocking trade in guns and actual human lives. So let's jump in. Our story kicks off in 1549 with the arrival of a Jesuit missionary who would later become a saint, Francis Xavier. And his first impression of Japan? Well, it was incredibly positive.
In his letters back home to Europe, Xavier is just gushing about the Japanese. After traveling all through Africa and India, he writes that he'd finally found a non-Christian people who were, in his eyes, on the exact same level as Europeans, culturally, intellectually, everything. What really got him was their complex code of honor, their honesty, and what he called their amazing desire to learn. He saw this sophisticated, noble society, and he thought, this is it. This is the place.
So, if everything started out so great, where did it all go so wrong? Well, it turns out the reason the relationship completely fell apart had less to do with God and a whole lot more to do with the brutal realities of power, money, and war. Okay, to really get what happened next, you have to picture the scene. When the Jesuits show up, Japan is right in the middle of its Sengoku period. Think of it as a 100-year-long all-out civil war. You've got these regional warlords, the daimyo, all locked in this desperate fight for survival. And this is where everything changes. See, the Portuguese traders who arrived right alongside the missionaries didn't just bring Bibles. They brought the single most game-changing piece of technology of the era, the arquebus, basically an early rifle. This gave any daimyo who sided with them a huge, almost unfair military advantage. So this set up a powerful, unspoken deal, right? It was a pretty simple trade. On one side, you have these Japanese lords who convert to Christianity, becoming Kuroshitan daimyo. What do they get? Exclusive access to European guns and the saltpeter you need to make gunpowder. In return, the Jesuits get exactly what they wanted: a flood of new converts and a real political foothold in the country. But here's the catch. This alliance, it wasn't just about switching gods. Oh no. It demanded the complete and often violent erasure of Japan's own spiritual traditions. And look, this wasn't just a suggestion. It was official policy. This quote you're seeing is from the head Jesuit in charge, Gaspar Coelho. He's telling these new Christian lords, straight up, that the only way to prove their faith is to systematically destroy every single Buddhist temple and Shinto shrine in their lands. And man, did they take that advice to heart. These new Christian lords went on a rampage. We're talking burning down centuries-old temples, smashing sacred sites. They even dug up and desecrated the graves of their own ancestors, all to show how loyal they were to this new god. And this is where it gets really, really dark. What about the Japanese people who refused to convert? Well, they were rounded up, captured, and sold as slaves to Portuguese merchants. Think about that for a second. Those slaves were then traded for more saltpeter and more guns. Japanese people, became an export commodity. Okay, so while all this chaos is going on, there's one guy, one incredible warlord, who is this close to conquering and unifying the entire country: the brilliant and absolutely ruthless Oda Nobunaga. Now, for a long time, Nobunaga and the Jesuits had a great thing going. It was a classic "the enemy of my enemy is my friend" situation. Nobunaga desperately needed the guns the Portuguese were selling. And who were his biggest enemies? These powerful warrior monk armies from the Buddhist monasteries. Well, guess who the Jesuits' biggest spiritual rivals were? Exactly. For a while, their goals lined up perfectly. But then, right at the peak of his power, just when he's about to win it all, Nobunaga shows his true hand. He builds this magnificent new castle, Azuchi, and he invites the missionaries over to see his grand vision for Japan's future. So, he takes them to a temple at the very top of his castle, and inside, there's just this one stone. He explains to them that this stone is a shintai, a sacred object that houses the spirit of a god. And when they ask which god it represents, he tells them it represents him. You have to understand what a bombshell this was. In that one moment,
The Jesuits realized Nobunaga wasn't an ally they could ever control. If he unified Japan, he wasn't going to just let their faith exist. No, he was going to demand worship for himself. He wasn't an ally anymore, he was a rival god. And for them, that was an existential threat.
But their freakout wasn't just about theology. To really get why they were so alarmed, we have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Because what was happening in Japan, it was part of a global playbook being used by European colonial powers. This timeline here really lays it all out. Look at the dates. At the exact same time the Jesuits are getting their foothold in Japan, Spain is in the middle of a full-blown military conquest of the Philippines. The Japanese rulers weren't naive. They could see this colonization happening literally right next door. And they started to connect the dots. They saw that these missionaries often played two roles. Sure, they were men of God, but they were also, in a way, intelligence agents. Their incredibly detailed reports back to Europe weren't just about saving souls. They were assessing military strength, political divisions, basically mapping out a country's weaknesses for a potential invasion down the line. And let's be crystal clear, this wasn't just the action of a few bad apples or rogue traders. The historical documents show the Jesuit order itself was a direct player in this arms for slaves trade. They used the profits to fund their entire operation. It was baked right into their business model. So, this all brings us back to that big question we started with. When a newly unified Japan later began its absolutely brutal persecution of Christians, was that just about religious intolerance, or was it something else entirely? Was it a desperate, preemptive strike to defend their nation from becoming the next colony on the map? This hidden history suggests it wasn't just a clash of faiths, but Japan's first and bloodiest defense against an empire.